We're ranking the 2024 rookie wide receivers today. We're putting them in the tiers, and we're adding 3 more wide receivers to our rankings. 3 more random wide receivers, so you're going to have to stay to the end to see who they are and how these rankings are going to shape up, because we change them throughout the video. Before we start, you need to click that subscribe button, because we're talking about this rookie draft every single day this offseason. We're getting you ready for the NFL draft. We're getting you ready to build your dynasty teams, and it all starts right here. But let's head over to the tier maker. We got the tiers here. We got the players down below. We're going to pick them at random. We're going to rank them. And then we're going to move guys around throughout the video. So if I throw a guy at A, they could end up at D by the end of the video. That means you got to pay attention to the whole thing. But coming on down, as we got to keep this moving, our first wide receiver, we're going to throw him up at S. And see how good you feel when you see this name at S, and how you want to rank him after you see this. Keon Coleman. Definitely not an S tier guy. Definitely not. But what I think about Keon Coleman is he is a fit guy. A guy that if he gets drafted to the right team, I'm bumping up. But if he fails the combine this weekend, if he sucks at the combine, if he goes to a less than grand situation, I'm sending him to hell. That being said, when I think about him, when I think about his situation, I think about the ranking, I think about the skill set and everything involved, watching him on tape, watching him separate sometimes, watching his ball skills, watching the hands. I'm going to put him in the middle, the C range. Last week I started off with him in B, and I moved him down to C. I think I'm going to keep him at C right now. I feel like he's a C tier player for me, and I feel like he can bump up to B in the right situation. Maybe A. Nah, I can't get the A. Nah, I can't get the A. Maybe B if he goes in a good spot, but he's staying in C right now. And I think last week we added a tier, and we're going to do that right now. It's going to be our E tier, and we'll move that in here for you guys to see right now. And there it is, the E tier. Take a look at that. But we got to move on to our next player off the board here at random to rank, and we're going to throw up Odunze because he's right there looking at us. Odunze, come on down. One of the top wide receivers in this class. Could be the most productive wide receiver in this class, because in Dynasty Fantasy Football, we care about productivity, not sexy routes, not fantastic catches. Being productive, scoring fantasy points. He could definitely do that with his upside, with his speed downfield. The odds are a little bit less likely compared to Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Nabers, but it could be in the cards. He's going to get top-end draft capital, going to be landing in a spot that is looking to use him early in his career, that's looking to lean on him, looking for him to be a top dog, looking to use him as a wide receiver 1. And how I feel about him is that if we put him in last year's class, he's a top tier guy. Last year we did not have an S tier. We had an A tier, an A1 and A2 tier. He would have been in one of those tiers, and I think he would have been fighting it out up here in the top tier with those guys. JSN and Jordan Addison. This year's a little bit different. I think he's going to hang out in tier A. I think he's going to hang out in tier A right now. And I don't see him moving up for me unless something crazy happens. And I don't see him moving down unless something crazy happens. I might move someone in with him. He might catch a roommate. But I don't see myself moving on from him too much. I can see some of you guys wanting him in S tier, and I can also see some of you guys not liking him too much. At the end of the day, it's an average ranking. It's not the greatest thing in the world, but we're moving on. Next wide receiver coming off the board, one of my favorites, Troy Franklin. This guy can stretch the field. He's very nuanced. We got a lot of goods in his game. I could definitely see him transitioning to the NFL level rather quickly. That being said, Troy Franklin, I'm going to have to put him in B tier right now. I think B tier is great for him. I think draft capital, latter part first round, somewhere early second round, definitely going to be in the top 60. Landing spot's going to be huge, especially for his initial rookie season. But I think we got a lot of upside here. Moving on to our next player, coming off the board, Malik Nabers. And whenever I do Malik Nabers, I pair him with Marvin Harrison Jr. Because you know why? Because they're both generational prospects. You don't get that every year. And I feel like I can't talk about one without the other when doing these rankings and do it correctly. And when I wake up every morning, I see the sun in the air, I don't know what I'm going to feel. I could feel like I'm a Malik Nabers guy and he's my wide receiver 1. Or I could be a Marvin Harrison Jr. guy and he could be my wide receiver 1. That being said, whatever you got, I love it. I love it. I think it's great. Whether you like Harrison or Nabers, roll with it. I like them both. I'm drafting both. I'm trying to get both. I want both, and I'm getting both. That being said, we're moving on to our next guy. If I put this guy with their generational talents, Nabers and Harrison Jr., how ugly are you going to feel? How dirty is it going to be? But look at that. Woo! That's bad. That's bad. He should be a top 60 pick. It looks like the NFL is going to like him, but that's what big media is going to say. They may not. They may not. We got a lot of good wide receivers in this class. This guy did not break out at the collegiate level. We're still waiting for him to break out at Georgia. He didn't do so. Sure, he did good things at the Senior Bowl. He was injured this year a little bit, but still was not overly productive. Not that type of wide receiver. But if he goes in the right situation, we're bumping up. More than likely, the odds are he's got to land in the right spot. He's a spot guy. And when I think about him, spot guy with another spot guy with Coleman. When I think about this, am I going to keep these guys here? We shall see, but we're moving on to our next wide receiver. And he's got a lot of buzz. He's been blowing up. He was good at the Senior Bowl. He's going to blow up this weekend at the Combine. Roman Wilson. He's going to run into 4.3s. I promise you. He's going to run into 4.3s. And he's going to catch another value boost. He's going to start lurking in the first round of rookie drafts. After this weekend, I just gone over another rookie mock draft on the channel today. Depending if I posted that first or not before this video. Just did it right before I did this video. Roman Wilson did not get drafted. He did not get drafted in the first 2 rounds. We're not seeing that in rookie drafts. He's going to be in the first 2 rounds easy. Might push for the first round, especially after the Combine. He's running in the 4.3s. He's going to melt your face. But when I look at Roman Wilson, I know he's going to melt the Combine. I know he's going to be productive. I know he's going to see an increase in value. And here soon, he's going to be flirting with the first round of rookie drafts. He's going to get draft capital. And when I rank him, it's usually in this area. And when I'm ranking him in this area, I look at Ladd McConkey and their skill sets because they both create good separation off the break. However, this guy's got 4.3 speed. He's a little bit more productive. He's more jazzed up, rocked up, and can really hammer it better downfield. I like him a lot better. Keon Coleman struggles at creating separation. Might get draft capital, might not. The market's starting to sour on him. But when I think about Roman Wilson versus Ladd McConkey, it's hands down I'd rather have Roman Wilson. With that theory, I think it's better to push these two down to D. I think that makes sense. I think that makes B and C less clustered. I think B and C is starting to melt together, though. We might have to just do this eventually, but we're going to have to move on and start digesting these wide receivers. And the next guy we're going to be looking at here, Brendan Rice. Come on down. Brendan Rice looked good at the Senior Bowl. We have a bigger, aggressive wide receiver who can create separation, good to catch point. I think he's going to be a tremendous value in rookie drafts because I'm seeing him go in the 3rd round. I'm seeing him push towards the 4th round, and I think that's a good value because he is a tremendous prospect. The production isn't really there, but it's close. It's close, but when I think about him and his skills, I think I'm going to put him in D. I like him as a prospect. I think he's got a lot of upside. I like him better than Keon Coleman. I like him better than Ladd McConkey, and I'm shooting for that upside. Coleman and McConkey could shoot up for me if they go in the right spot, but they need to go in the right spot, which is very perplexing for me. I don't like that with my wide receivers. I don't like that at all. We're moving on to our next player, Xavier Worthy. Xavier Worthy, I like him a lot, but I've been thinking about him a lot as well. He's got an early breakout age, productive throughout his collegiate career. We got 4.3 speed. We'll see at the Combine, but he tested in the 10.5s during high school. Top-tier track athlete. Can see it on the field as well. Speed to burn, can get downfield, can be productive, and is very shifty in his routes. That being said, when I think about him, and I think about a guy like Roman Wilson, there's not too much difference here. They're very similar, and the fit, the draft capital could be a thing. And if I bump him up to B, I had him there initially, then flipped him down here last week at the end of the video. If I put him up here, I like Troy Franklin so much, I feel like I'm doing him a little dirty. I think this makes C a little bit more clear, and it makes sense. Also tells a story with C where, like, I really like the B players. The B players are kind of like my guys. They're top tier guys. C players are kind of my guys too, but a little less. I like these guys, but we're moving on. Next, we're looking at Malachi Corley. Malachi Corley, big, thick wide receiver who's going to project in the slot and get you yards after the catch. Steve Smith loves him. He's a very aggressive wide receiver. He's a lunch pail wide receiver. Has some upside in the right system. He's a scheme fit guy for me. That being said, he needs to go in the right spot. The NFL has to like him. He also has to get that draft capital. I'm worried about that. When I think about him and Ladd McConkey, it's almost a push, but he is a G5 prospect. I can't marry G5 prospects. Let's put him here at E right now. I think that gives more validity to D. I think that makes Brendan Rice look better in this light, and I think this is a good spot for him right now. That being said, if you're in this tier right now, S through E, you're still a good prospect. This is a very good wide receiver class. But now it's time to look at Xavier Legette. And Xavier Legette can make some money this week because he does have some good size, adjusted athleticism on the field. We got to test that way. The 40 time's also a test. It's also a test because you got to be mechanically sound to run that thing. If you don't hit into your mechanics, you could be a little bit slower testing, which could play into the numbers. Could also let us know whether or not he did his homework or not. He should test well in the size adjusted athleticism department. If he doesn't, send him to hell in your rankings. Send him to hell and tell him to never come back. But when I look at him, I do see some upside. I don't see the NFL liking him that much. He can create separation to a degree. We saw that at the Senior Bowl, but he is very raw. I like him a lot less than Malachi Corley, but I'm not creating another tier today. I'm just not doing it. But we got to move on. We got to move on to our next guy because I don't want to talk about him anymore. Jalen Polk was a new guy last week. He's got some upside, and what I like about him is he can make plays downfield. He can be an air yards guy. Right fit, he's golden. And I'm saying that because right fit, he could be like a top 24 dynasty wide receiver. He could be a top 15 guy. He could hit that upside. He's got ball skills. We are talking him up at the end of the college football season. Then draft season comes down. Things die down. He's not like a top 5 guy, so people don't talk about him a lot, but he does have some upside to his game. I think when I rank him, I can't put him here. I just don't see him getting the draft capital as these guys. I don't feel like his profile is as strong as these guys. But when I look here and I think of upside versus tangible ball skills, creating separation, I feel like he's got some stuff in his game where Keon Coleman, really? And then Ladd McConkey really hasn't broken out yet. We got production from Polk. We've got ball skills. We got a good ADOT from Polk. I can see where he can be a good fantasy relevant asset. I think right here in tier D, at the top part of it. Usually a tier should be the whole rankings. They're all together, and that is how it is with me. Sometimes at the top it would be a little bit different. Malachi Corley is a lot more than Legette for me in my rankings. I think Polk and Rice is a little bit more than Coleman and McConkey, but I can't put them down to E either. We're moving on. Our next wide receiver, Brian Thomas. Come on down. Brian Thomas Jr., if you want to be exact, if you're a Karen. But Brian Thomas, man, he's got some ball skills, got some juice to get downfield. A very fun wide receiver prospect. Should get drafted in the first round. Might be going to a grand situation because of that, because he's going in the latter part, middle part of the first round. I have him in B. I have him solid in B. If either one of these two go in a good situation, in a situation with draft capital, say the Chiefs, which could be more likely for Troy Franklin, as I think Brian Thomas will be off the board. If that happens, or if Thomas goes to a spot where the quarterback's going to push it to him, one of those guys could be here. they're pushing for here, and you might already have Thomas here or here like this. That makes sense. That makes sense to me. I think that's a good thing to happen, but I'm going to be conservative here. I'm going to keep him here. I think Brian Thomas nudges Troy Franklin by this, and I have the tiebreaker as draft capital and situation. Situation weighing heavy here because I think Brian Thomas is getting the draft capital. That's why I have Brian Thomas listed ahead of Troy Franklin. I like them both, and I'm getting a lot of questions about those two wide receivers. So there's your answer. We're moving on, though. We're moving on. Jacob Cowing. Jacob Cowing. I like him. He is a Devy name. Broke out early in his career. Productive with 2 different collegiate programs. He was productive at the G5 level. He was productive at the Pac-5 level. And he can be a guy that could be a sneaky play in the latter part of drafts. He could be a trendy option. That might be when you want to be looking at the running back position. When I think about him, though, and looking at these wide receivers, I can't push him up there. I'm going to have him here in E. I'm going to have him as a late-round prospect that I'm looking at. And that's all I think about him. He's a guy I might pull the trigger on, but I think I'm not going to draft him too many times because I think I'm going to be looking at the running back position and just grasping at straws to see if I can hit mid-season due to attrition. But let's go to our next player, and we're to our new 3 wide receivers. The new guys. The first guy, come on down. A.D. Mitchell. A.D. Mitchell has a ton of upside. Very fluid route runner for his size. Can get downfield. Good ball skills. A lot of people got him ranked high. He's got a good ADOT. He could really excel in fantasy football. Definitely could. And I think he's worthy of a spot somewhere around here. Somewhere around this Roman Wilson range. This is where he should be. The question is, which Texas wide receiver would you rather have? Which one would you rather have? Analytics people would rather have Xavier Worthy. I think film guys would rather have A.D. Mitchell. I like them both. I feel like A.D. Mitchell could be a surprise pick. I feel like he could be a tremendous value in rookie drafts, especially right now in the mock draft picture. We're moving on to our next guy, Tez Walker. A lot of people loved him right before the Senior Bowl. A lot of people hate him right now due to the Senior Bowl, but I kind of see how it is. We got a cluster of good wide receivers. He's a good wide receiver. I feel like if he goes to a team with a clustered depth chart, we got to send him to hell. I feel like he can be a great deep threat in the right situation. I feel like he can be fantasy relevant. I'm just keeping my eye on him. And with me keeping my eye on him, I can't have him up here to C. That doesn't make sense. I like these wide receivers, and I got some question marks with Tez here. I'm going to put him right ahead of Cowing, even though this is technically the same ranking. Maybe ahead of Leggett. Maybe right ahead of him. Doesn't matter to me. I'm just seeing where these wide receivers land and what happens with them, and then I'm going to move on from there. But I got one more wide receiver to look at today, Ricky Pearsall. And I think my words about him is going to make more sense than the rankings. I think he's going to be that late round guy we're going to go to as that sneaky play. I don't mind that at all. I think he's going to be a later round wide receiver, maybe middle of the board of the NFL draft, later rounds of rookie draft. I think he's going to have some upside. Looked good at Senior Bowl. Create separation. Broke out with 2 different collegiate programs from market share standpoint. If you have a gauge at 20%. Ricky Pearsall is a sneaky play. I think he's got some upside. I think he's a player that can make an impact. That being said, when I think about his rankings, I'm going to put him down here. I think he's very sneaky. I'm going to put him there. I can't put him in D because he's not going to get the draft capital as the other guys. I definitely know that. I don't feel like he is. I don't know that, but I don't feel like he is. But I feel like when we get to the 4th round of rookie drafts, latter part of the 3rd round, that's going to be a name that we're going to come to and we're going to click that button on. I feel that. I feel that a lot. Situation, draft capital obviously matters. But if you're looking for a late round guy in your drafts that you just want to put a chip on, Pearsall could be that dude. I have good feelings about him due to what I saw, due to the nuance, due to him being productive with 2 different teams, him transitioning to Florida. But those are the rankings. Who's too low? Who's too high? Let me know. Hit that subscribe button, and I'll catch you next week.